Welcome to the A New Insight podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Welcome back. We are back for the second half of our interview with senior psychology research fellow and registered dietitian nutritionist, Dr. Tatyana El-Kour. Tatyana gave us some really amazing and so valuable insight into her inspiration, into her abilities to understand what's happening right now with AI, how it's influencing us, and how social media has basically shifted and changed our eating styles and behaviors. I am so excited to learn some more from her. Tatiana, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yay! So, we were talking about this a little bit in our last half, but so many young people are immersed in social media and from a very early age. And not to age myself, but I did not grow up with social media, and I am actually pretty glad I didn't. How do you see these platforms influencing the relationship with food, body image, and self worth?
As I mentioned earlier, Sapatra, the food is no longer just nourishment, it's identity. So teens compare plates, portion sizes, even fasting streaks, and the likes becomes measures of worth. The hearts become measures of worth. Even the shares become measures of worth. So some reclaim culture with pride. I've seen Lebanese teens posting about manaish, which is a dough with olive oil and thyme. You have Korean students even showcasing some, kimbap, or
Mhm.
Mexican youth highlighting tortillas, but other, internalize even impossible ideals. So research shows us that social media exposes or exposure raises body dissatisfaction and disordered eating risk among adolescents. So while this is a measure not for nourishment, it's meant for culture and pride and self-worth. The self-worth stems more from the interaction with media, so it stems from the likes and the feeling that comes with it. So the same platform that can celebrate your culture can also erode your confidence, depending
Mhm.
on what gets amplified.
Exactly. So talk to me a little bit about body image and self-worth. What kind
Mhm.
of influence is out there for anybody struggling with body image and self-worth? What are people tending to be drawn toward?
So I think with body image and self-worth, we really need to look into the backing of a person. So if some people are prone to eating disorders more than others, the vulnerability piece comes into play, and also the cultural piece comes into play. So the context matters. And so if we want to talk about the impact of technology, as I've mentioned earlier, videos light up your the same reward circuits if you are looking at somebody who is starving herself, or who is giving you some tricks of trade. How do you hide food from your parents or from your teachers or from your healthcare provider, or how do you abuse medicine, or how can you mix and match some medicines in order not to get fat but to manage your psychology and also your mood without food. Irrespective of whatever trend you are exposed to, there are groups that would magnify that. So again, viewers are immersed in that culture, and they are triggered again and again without really feeling satisfied. They still feel they're missing something. And
Mhm.
so that missing piece is even feeding, it's eroding their confidence and their self-worth. So they feel worthless if they are not watching, or they feel worthless if they are not doing the act, and if they're not doing it enough, and if they're not watching enough compared to others. And so I have worked with some teens who, I haven't fasted enough. It's been only 6 days that I've not eaten. And some others have done it for 12 days. And so over time, this is normalizing the disorder, and normalizing the eating disorder as well. And the distortion becomes normal. And even the normal becomes a benchmark, and the benchmark increases as they are exposed to even more severe content. So
Mm.
with that piece is, again, the exposure is increasing the internalization, so they're not satisfied with what they continue to see. They want to see even more horrific episodes, and that would lead them into another phase of the disorder.
Wow. Oh, it's so scary. And I think right now we're also in the age of, the kind of weight loss medication adoption. I mean, we know that these medications were originally designed for people with type 2 diabetes and trying to, manage difficult, uncontrolled cases. But now diet culture has really taken on those medications and made them weight loss medications. Are you seeing anything in that realm?
Yes,
Uh,
yes, absolutely. There's a
wh-
huge abuse even on the
mm,
medication access. And
mhm.
I think the key thing here is, we've discussed how algorithms work. They basically they watch your behavior, they monitor it. But then the algorithms also amplify whatever steers the strongest feelings. So there's the emotion and cognition piece. So pride or shame or anxiety, they without distinguishing inspiration, for example, from
Mhm.
obsession.
Mhm.
So that piece is also critical to distinguish. So with GLP-1s, with those medications, they give you the promise right in a single shot.
Yes.
So people, they've already, they became obsessed. It's like a single shot. I don't even have to do exercise. I don't have to bother about my eating. I don't have to learn about anything. It's just a simple injection, and I live my life. And while we appreciate science and evidence, and also getting more newer medications, we have to be very careful that those medications don't work for everyone. There
Yes.
is a lot of personal aspects. So some of them have had issues with thyroid cancer. Some others had issues with the paralysis, stomach paralysis. Some others were admitted to the ICU, and even some others have actually taken it and didn't feel any difference.
Mhm.
This- and
Yes.
and so it created a culture of abuse, that okay, I'm taking it, I'm taking more, I'm taking more, and then I'm taking more, and then they are subject to higher risk and higher complications, because they didn't feel the same effect. And even if they didn't have any complication, the psychological impact is enormous, because
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't feel like they've tried everything, nothing is working, so I'm a failure, and then we go back to that track. So that level of satisfaction, dissatisfaction can also be triggered, and it's also further amplified with technology, because if you are portraying a feeling of anxiety or shame or blame that this didn't work with me, all what you are going to get is of the obsession around the GLP-1. You're not going to
Mm.
get the inspiration of a lifestyle change, or of how behavior modification can do the trick.
Exactly, and I think that that's just where social media advertising has just, gone to the races with this and really promoted these medications as that kind of miracle fix. Some are more insidious than others. Some do can try to recommend lifestyle changes, but there's so much misinformation in diet culture that's now being subsumed with these medications. So you look at the, um, the current diet trend of the very high animal protein, low carbohydrate diet, which we've seen over and over again in the research, does not lead to lasting weight loss. It leads only to short term weight loss, but then you have long term complications from over consuming animal protein. That recommendation is also taken into these weight loss medications, where the emphasis that I see everywhere is you got to just eat as much protein as you can. But when they're on these medications, they don't want to eat. So they're trying to force themselves to eat. They're doing whatever they can. They're taking protein shakes. They're drinking a lot of water. But most of them are experiencing extreme malnutrition very, very difficult symptoms like gastroparesis, the intestinal blockages, but they're also seeing their hair fall out in clumps. There are many cases of actual vision loss. There are so many issues, pancreatitis. So it's very frightening for me to see what's happening with these weight loss medications. And in fact, in a couple weeks, I'm going to deliver a TED talk about what we're seeing right now in diet culture with the difficulties in weight loss medications. I would love to hear from you. What's a way forward away from that? If people are realizing, and I think some people are, that maybe these weight loss medications aren't for them, or they are afraid of all of these symptoms, what's a way forward and out of this medication quagmire for them?
The obsessive tracking, I think, is one key element that we need kind of to work on.
Mm.
So, as I've mentioned, the technology really is monitoring your behavior, is tracking your behavior, is targeting your emotions, and is predicting. With the predictive analytics, those are three key mechanisms how it's working with you. And so obsessive tracking is often linked to anxiety or to guilt or even to the disordered eating pieces or to the obsession on medications. So tools should highlight balance, giving variety, giving including energy and sleep, what counts, the science that counts for a lifestyle change, and not, punish users with the perfection, like, or the trick that you really got to have this medication or have this GLP-1. And as I mentioned, the algorithms tingle your emotions, so they track them, they target them, and so those folks or people are really emotional about their weight. That's why they resort to to weight medications, and they're not satisfied by what they are seeing or viewing. So they look for that emotional satisfaction is coming from technology and from tracking those medications, from giving them that promise, and then as they take it builds that kind of obsession, and without realizing the implications. So
Yes.
I think this is very critical for us, that when we talk about weight, not to forget the emotional dimension, but also not to forget how people interact with technology and media, and how their emotion and cognition is manifested through that interaction, and then address that piece
Mm.
before discussing what are the pros and cons of those medications. And you'll be
Yes.
surprised how people will really respond to that. They will understand better. And now they are better, once they're better informed, they are more able to actually actively listen to, okay, give me the pros and cons, and let us discuss how we could bring that balance.
Right. I think that we have really become conditioned to seek external solutions for our health. And I think that that's come from a variety of different sources. It comes from our medical community, it comes from pharmaceutical industry, it comes from social media. And I think one pathway forward that we just have forgotten about, but we were really good about when we were children, is that we would listen to our bodies when we were children.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
were intuitively tuned in to our internal cues, which includes our hormones. So we would hear our stomach growling and go, "Oh, okay, I'm hungry." And we usually would be able to satisfy that hunger. And I think as kids, we were much more mindful when we were eating. We would enjoy what we were eating. So maybe we're eating a little bit slower, and we were able to tell when we were no longer hungry. And that actually kept us in hormonal balance and homeostasis. That's what I also suggest to people is really don't be afraid of your hunger. I think that these weight loss medications have touted hunger as something that's bad. It is so important for our hormonal balance that we actually honor our hunger and we eat slow enough that we can really understand when we're full. Because when we're balanced hormonally, that's when our body's in an actual state where you can possibly lose weight. You're not stressed, you're not in your sympathetic nervous system. And when you're in your parasympathetic nervous system, your body digests food more easily. So I think it's also a return to really trying to trusting ourselves and trusting what's happening inside of our bodies. So I want to pivot a little, and it's in the same vein, but let's talk about these nutrition and fitness apps. They use calorie tracking and constant data monitoring. Do you see these tools unintentionally fuel disordered eating patterns?
I think the answer is yes and no. For some, tracking is empowering, in fact. For others, it becomes rigid. Every bite is judged by the number. And
Mhm.
so I've heard of teens competing over who can log the fewest carbs or who can fast the longest, as I've mentioned even earlier. And that competition is even broadcasted online, and they create challenges and hackathons around that. And AI intensifies this because it
Mhm.
notices not only what teens log, but how they react. So if you have so much excitement going on by logging in fewer carbs, you're creating that trend. And even if they celebrate streaks with with emojis, the system rewards them by showing them more extreme content. And
Mhm.
that again, brings me back to the studies that show that obsessive tracking is linked to anxiety, to guilt, and also to disordered eating symptoms.
Mhm.
And so that's where the tools should really do the trick. They should highlight the balance, the variety, the energy, the sleep, or any other aspect related to whatever content people are watching, to punish, so not to punish users but with perfection, but to bring in the balance and to bring in the science. And so I think one of the key things that as a risk, we've talked a lot about how we deal with the patients or with clients, but we didn't really discuss where are the scientists in this in this ecosystem.
Yes.
So science is often absent in those feeds, for example, related to GLP-1 or to any medication, weight loss medications. So I've mentioned intermittent fasting, for example. You see a lot of reels on intermittent fasting but new research shows when you practice it in extreme ways, it's linked to higher risk of death and of early death and heart disease. But algorithms rarely show that caution or any caution of the weight loss, like gastroparesis with GLP-1s. So they reward emotional highs and not that nuance. And so that's why I argue for algorithmic diversity, if I may say.
Yes.
So if platforms can read our emotions, they should also be responsible for balancing what they serve.
Yeah, I think, it becomes self-fulfilling for a lot of people because they want certain things to be true, so they may just reject science outright. But I just think that that just means that professionals like us, we need to be out there and trying to, create our own social media reels with actual, science, evidence based nutritional and lifestyle facts that people then can have access to. One person I absolutely love is Dr. Michael Grieger, who has nutritionfacts.org. And I encourage people to go there because he is very diligent in picking through science and looking for scientific rigor and bringing forth the best evidence based nutrition and lifestyle information. And we just need more people like that who are really interested in improving people's health. The problem, I think, with that is that um, there's practically no money in that. And maybe that's why
Yeah.
people aren't doing that. Michael Grieger does it as a labor of love. He doesn't make any money off of nutritionfacts.org. That's why I would go to him because he's not trying to make money off of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
He's trying to bring forth science. So I think, you know, be discerning, everybody, with what you're seeing online and maybe investigate a little bit more. Try to find out if this is an actual scientific fact or if this is just some misinformation put out there. Oh my gosh, there's so much I want to ask you. So, we're seeing a lot of what I eat in a day videos. Let's talk about that with these food related influencers. We've talked a little bit about, ones that eat great portions. But what about the ones that are, just showing these like little micro portions of what they're eating? How does that impact eating behaviors, especially among impressionable people?
Hmm. Okay. So I think it goes back to the content and context and how you
Hmm.
interact with them. So if those like what I eat in a day is a balanced, healthy approach, then you are going to actually be a role model, a positive role model to instilling a good content for
Hmm.
people. However, if it is not really culturally relevant, it's gonna strip people away from their own culture. So they would think that, for example, eating quinoa every day when they don't even have quinoa is going to be the key to success. So that creates another feeling of being depressed or frustrated, that if I want to be healthy, I do not have access to the resources or to the food that is already being marketed or being relayed online. So whatever it is, whatever content it is, what you eat on a given day, AI creates the tunnels. So it could be so a single click on what you eat a day can flood a feed with extreme versions of those diets of what people could eat on a given day. And then the system is fed by emotions, like, you're giving hearts, you're giving likes, or even anxious pauses, and it tells the system whether to keep the content going or to show you other content. So the
Mm.
system is observing how you are interacting, and then how you're feeling about it, and how you're interacting with it and feeling about it, and then it starts predicting your behavior and feeding what you really need to see.
Mhm.
And so, as I mentioned, the risk is in the lack of diversity. So yes, you would want to see what is eaten on a given day, but you really want to frame it in your own personal health and well-being, but in your own family context and in your own cultural norm and context.
Yes, so let's do that. Well, tell me in your healthful way, what do you eat in a day and how can that help people?
Yeah, sure, of course. So I tend to, so my morning is a very traditional Arabic morning. So I would have eggs, and I would have milk, and I would have a version of either a white cheese or labneh with some olive oil and some bread. So that's a typical kind of breakfast for me. And then I would have in 2 or 3 hours, I would have a snack, normally a fruit, and that would be followed by, again, a traditional lunch with family, which normally is comprised of either a bread or a rice with a stew or vegetables cooked with either meat or chicken, or if it is a vegetarian or a vegan day, it could be chickpeas or lentils or even or beans, and then. And then it could be followed by in few hours time, it could be followed by a fruit or followed by some sweet, Arabic sweet, and it doesn't have to have the sugar, by the way, but
Mhm.
it is a pudding, for example, a milk based pudding, or it could be kind of a custard based version. And then normally dinners are not really like my forte. We normally enjoy lunch versus dinner, and
Mhm.
so dinners are usually a fruit, or it could be a milk, or it could be a version, again, a version of breakfast if you are meeting up with a few folks. So
Yes.
that's typically what my day would look like.
Yes, and I would say that you really are kind of following your circadian rhythm when you do have your lunch actually, or even your breakfast and lunch be the, kind of larger meals of the day. That's something in America that we're not as well versed with. Usually people have their largest meal at the end of the day, and that is a little harder on your digestion. So it's really interesting to hear, and I love to hear the cultural foods at play and how they're integrated along with having your meals with your family and really
Absolutely.
enjoying that. And I think we in America need to adopt that more. I think that there's many people who don't, who will eat alone, even if they have, full family members in the house, they're all eating at different times. And I think being social while we eat is just so important. And it also helps us slow down a little bit. Well, let me ask a couple of other questions. Do you believe that virtual reality or AI generated body filters could amplify harmful beauty standards? I'm going to guess yes. And if so, what can be done to help protect users?
Yes, yes, and yes. They because I mean, creating that ideal. I mean, the filters, the way the women, the children, even teens or children are looking at themselves. I'm seeing a lot of body inacceptance. This is not me when I look at myself without a filter. So that is and that is creating havoc, because even with the filters you're seeing yourself as beautiful, but without them you cannot present yourself. So that
Mhm,
even is causing more social exclusion and isolation. And so
mhm,
so the story is the same. I'm not going to be repeating the narrative, but it's just the content is different.
mhm,
And to that end, I think I believe it's there are a few steps that we need to take. Number one is to again lead with curiosity, not with control. So you really need to notice how you are behaving and how others are behaving, how it's making them feel, and then discuss that and talk more about what is really normal and what has been superimposed images or even created in virtual reality norms. When you come back to reality and you realize it's basically not it. um Model joy. So again, the positive modeling is really critical and very important. So you can see that people who are not using filters, people who are not using the VR, are actually happy people, successful people. They're doing a lot of things and they don't look as perfect as the filter makes it. So
mhm.
though that modeling is very critical. And then the other piece is that understanding that the technology is listening to your emotions too. So whatever you're expressing, even if you're thinking that's funny or that's lovely, the system is tracking you and it's feeding you next. So it's important to really be vigilant about how you express your emotions online,
Yes,
and also to learn that you when you scroll or when you show that is you show it with awareness, and you're also engaging more intentionally and not
yes,
unintentionally with that.
yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, one more question. Oh, I could go on forever with you though, because you are fascinating. What role do researchers, clinicians, and policymakers play in making sure new technologies don't worsen eating disorder prevalence and severity? What can we all do?
I think they can educate. I mean, they have to be educated first. So that's number one. And I think leadership is critical. And we should really
Mhm,
be focused not on a top down approach, but on a collaborative approach or a co creation approach, a co design approach,
mhm,
using the user centered design to support the decision making, and also using data. From personal experiences before the population level data, of course, because this will drive the emotional piece and also will help them understand how it relates to them. The
mm,
third piece is also that we really need to communicate the positive aspect of technology too, that it can be used for good when filters are in there or when it is used in a correct manner. For example, when you use if you use, for example, AI to support nudges and timed nudges on seasonality, on prices, or even on weather and emotions, and tie that to eating patterns or to
mm,
availability of foods and budgeting. It can help people make better decisions around their food, and also around their culture and around the availability. For the eating disorder piece, obviously, is celebrating, is creating that culture of celebration and embracement, using those nudges versus the narrative of the beauty ideals of the one quick fix, and also of the obsessive, feeding that obsession versus breaking the cycle of obsession. So if we want to break the cycle of obsession, or even of the technology tracking, we have to use the breaks, the filters. So
Yes.
every 3 times you are exposed to this content, you have to have a message that tells you you have watched this for 3 times. It's like to give them another nudge that balances the act for a while. So the internalization is disrupted.
Well, that's going to be hard though, because you have a lot of commercial interests
It's
at
true.
play
Absolutely.
there. And so you'd have a lot of pushback. But I really think that policymakers, politicians, they should be aware of this and, helping to make social media, advertising, all of these things safer to people rather than harmful. But that's a tough one. And hopefully that will happen at some point. um, Tell everybody, now that we're out of time, how they can get a hold of you. How can they have you come do a workshop or come do a keynote address or get a hold of you or work with you? How do they find you?
Yeah, sure. They can find me on my website, tatyanaelkour.com, and they can fill out the form and reach out if they have any questions. I do offer talks and workshops and consulting for schools and organizations and even communities. And I'm looking into now I'm developing a free guide on how media and algorithms shape behavior. So that free resource guide will become available on my website very soon. So I look forward to updates on that as well, and also to engaging people around that.
Awesome. Tatiana, you are a wealth of information, and I'm so honored you have come on my podcast. I think that this is such an important topic, and it has not been covered on this podcast before. And I couldn't think of a better person to have come discuss this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Supetra. I also want to thank you for your excellent questions and for the amazing discussion that we had. It's a very important discussion, and you are playing a very important role as well. So I am both honored and blessed to speak with you today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so lovely, and we're going to stay in touch. You and I are
Absolutely.
cut of the same cloth, so we have to stay in touch. And maybe I'll have you back on the podcast to talk about some other stuff sometime in the future. Thank you. And
Thank you.
thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'm looking forward to the next exciting interview. I really hope to see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning into the A New Insight podcast. Please remember the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anu.insight and at anu-insight.com under the A New Insight podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anu.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.